Hey guys, and welcome back to another Kickster review. So today we're going to be doing a full spoiler breakdown of the latest Jurassic World animated series, and that is Jurassic World Chaos Theory. So I've got my jumper ready, so let's dive into it. I'm going to break down what I liked and disliked about the show, but at first I want to give you my overall thoughts, brief synopsis before we dive right in. My general thoughts is that I quite liked the show. I thought it was a very decent follow-up to the previous animated series, which was Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. The kids from that show are now grown up and they're dealing with a new threat in this story, which is set years into the future, set between the events of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom and Dominion. So it's just at kind of the starting point when the dinosaurs have made it to the mainland and they're now basically part of society. So it's kind of dealing with that sort of scenario. And the brief synopsis is here that at the very beginning, one of the main members of the Nublar Six, the six kids, Brooklyn, she is revealed to have been killed by an Allosaurus. I should say before I get into it, there are going to be spoilers when I do this discussion here, as obviously based on the thumbnail. So, if you don't want any spoilers, come back to this video once you have watched the series. But yeah, I'm going to be touching on a lot of spoilers here in this review. But basically, yeah, as I said, Brooklyn is presumed dead at the beginning of the series, killed by an Allosaurus. And their whole events of that is that they're trying to investigate what happens to her. Meanwhile, the other five existing members are being targeted by a group of raptors. Someone's setting these raptors onto them to try and kill them for whatever reason. And there's a whole kind of conspiracy in play. And basically the team has to get back together, regroup, and figure out who's trying to kill them and expose a grand conspiracy. And that takes them across the country, across the United States, encountering different dinosaurs here and there, different people who are good and bad, throw them into different situations. And yeah, ultimately they come out on top at the end, but it sets up at the very end that they've beaten this one enemy, but they've now exposed, okay, there is a bigger, badder guy in play here, and they're going to set off to try and find him, despite their concerns about getting thrown into this whole mess once again, involving dinosaurs and all sorts of things. And at the very end of the show, the last scene, it is revealed that Brooklyn is in fact alive, and she has been part of this whole conspiracy to begin with, and she's investigating a whole kind of dinosaur smuggling ring. So that's your brief synopsis there. So let's start off with what I liked. First and foremost is the character development. I was actually quite shocked watching this one, but I shouldn't have been, because it was quite decent in Camp Cretaceous, but I feel they've taken it to another level in this one with the five main members, in that they really spent time developing them now based on what we already knew from them, but also furthering them now into this like more mature role that they have, and showing the various different kind of issues that they each have going on in their lives. Darius, the main one, the black kid, is kind of in denial. You have Ben, who's going down a whole conspiracy theory path, and then you have the other two girls, Sammy and Yaz, who are a couple, and they're dealing with their own issues, and in different ways. Sammy's kind of feeling neglected, Yaz has got anxiety, and meanwhile Kenji, who was dating Brooklyn, he's dealing with his whole mess of losing Brooklyn and hating Darius because he kind of holds him responsible for Brooklyn's death because he worked with her essentially. And so there's a whole kind of interweb of the relationships going on between them that they got to mend before they can kind of conquer the greater issues together. And the development's great, and it was really been missing from the Jurassic World films, I should say, is that this show is kind of leading the way to show you how you can make Jurassic content with dinosaurs, entertaining stuff, but also have like genuine character development and character moments, and characters that have personalities and aren't just there to really be as a foil for the dinosaur to chase around. That's all the kind of Jurassic World films have been. Whereas this one shows real development, and for a kids show in particular, it's actually quite deep a lot of the time. So yeah, the most impressive thing to me by far with this show was the character development. I quite like the plot of the season as well. It's a very intriguing one that, as I mentioned, deals with a whole lot of conspiracies. Ben is kind of the spearhead of that, in that he's gone down this rabbit hole of searching all these different like dark web conspiracies about what might be going on with dinosaurs, what people might be targeting them. And some of the things he thinks are wrong, some of the things he actually turns out to be right. And I like that it kind of has this thriller aspect to the show that's more than just a thriller about dinosaurs trying to eat them, but it's a thriller about who's trying to kill them, namely being humans who are trying to kill them. And so it makes it a much more relatable story, in that you're not just worried about dinosaurs chasing after them, but actually people too. And so I really liked that it was an engaging plot that took you around the whole country, trying to investigate it and building suspense and tension, whilst also getting to know the characters along the way. Another thing I quite liked is that the dinosaurs in this show are used quite sparingly, which I'm a big fan of. If you've seen any of my Jurassic Park related videos, you know I love the fact that, particularly in the first movie, that they're actually used quite sparingly. They're concealed a fair amount. You know, the T-Rex is not revealed for the first half of this film. This show, yes, there's dinosaurs abound everywhere. They're living in a world now where they do live in amongst them, but they treat them as secondary to the story, not as the main driver of the story, which is what you need in order to have a successful Jurassic Park story, where you are invested in the characters first and foremost before branching out to have those events and experiences with the dinosaurs that put them in all sorts of compromising situations. And I really like that in that regard, they are used sparingly, in the sense that they're not driving the plot. They're using the dinosaurs. They're there to supplement the plot, and that's really the best way to use them. And it doesn't neglect the plot, doesn't get neglected any time just to have a moment with a dinosaur. Everything kind of means something. All the moments with dinosaurs kind of teach them something, how they form relationships with them. Obviously Ben, loves his Bumpy, the Ankylosaurus. So there's all sorts of good stuff going on there in terms of how they use the dinosaurs. And as I touched on when I'm talking about the character development, the show is actually not afraid to be deep. It's actually gets quite deep and emotional at times, and that was really great to see. I was kind of shocked by it. It's a kid show at the end of the day, but it's really teaching some very important lessons to kids about dealing with various issues, dealing with trauma, dealing with relationships, all sorts of things. And there's a line in one of the episodes by Sammy talking to Yaz. Yaz is dealing with great anxiety, and she's basically running away from her problems. And Sammy tells her, you can't just run away to this utopia thing and think you're always going to be safe. The real world doesn't work like that. You have to face your fears and conquer them. You're never going to be able to create a world around you that is completely free of issues and concerns and worries. It's just not the real world. And that's a great message to have to kids. And that was probably one of my favorite moments throughout the whole season, was just to see Sammy say those words. Because I feel like a lot of the way we handle kids these days is very much built around the idea that we can kind of wrap them in bubble wrap and seal them off from the rest of the world and protect them throughout all their childhood, never let them face any fears. And then what you get out of that is a bunch of kids who lack discipline, lack ability to kind of handle difficult situations, also all that sorts of things. This show kind of says no to that and says, no, you got to face your fears, because that's the only way you're going to grow and get through them. Another thing I like, as I mentioned, is that the way they handled the world that they currently have, that has both dinosaurs and humans living amongst each other, that is very much what we should have got out of the most recent Jurassic World film, which was Jurassic World Dominion. I felt that film really neglected that. It touched on it at the very beginning, but then went along on a plot that basically took them to another Jurassic Park or Sanctuary, where they're just kind of contained there. And that just really took me out of that film, and I disliked it a lot. But this one really just is not afraid to deal with the fact that dinosaurs are there out in the wild, and we just have to contend with that. And it's established as a new normal for living, and the way that dinosaurs are handled as being like a protected species and all that sort of thing. So it's very kind of realistic ways that they are used within the story. And so it very much does. Ultimately, the thing I liked here is that it did a lot of the things that Dominion should have done and neglected to do. The last key thing I really liked is that it feels like a very organic and natural follow-up to Camp Cretaceous. Camp Cretaceous, they are kids in that show, very young, and they're stuck on that island. And it feels like very much a kid's show, but it's a very quality one at that. And so I really appreciated that this one, it's aged them up, but it still has that same vibe and feel as Camp Cretaceous. The characters feel like their natural progression that they should be. So yeah, all credit to them for managing to bridge that gap, giving us the same characters, but giving them to us in the form that we still recognize them, but recognize that this is the natural way that they would have grown up. Now for the few dislikes. Firstly, the ending I didn't quite appreciate, even though it was very action-packed. They had the T-Rex unleashed against raptors and all that sort of stuff, very much playing at the endings of the original Jurassic Park and also Jurassic World to a little bit there too. That's fine, the action, but just the way it ended felt like made the whole season kind of feel like just a setup for the next season. It felt like there was no real payoff for all of their efforts in the season, which were intriguing and interesting to follow along with, but it felt like it missed out, and we didn't get what we should have earned by sticking our way throughout this season. Felt like they just kind of really left it on a cliffhanger that could have it just kind of felt, it cheapened the overall series for a bit, the season just a bit, because it just felt like they only exist to basically set up the next one. As I said, the T-Rex is brought in again at the end, kind of saves the day. And this is another issue I have, is that this is a repeated thing that they keep doing now. It was fun the first couple of times, made us fall in love with this franchise, but it's being done to death now, where the T-Rex is brought in at the last second all the time to save the day or have a fight with another dinosaur and just save them. And she does that once again here. It's like, it's getting old at this point, and I love the T-Rex. It's my favorite dinosaur within this universe, but use her in a better way. Use her throughout the season. Don't use her just in that one moment just to save the day. It's getting old and very fast, and I want to see her used in more interesting ways rather than just as a way to kind of bail out the main characters in a sticky situation. And lastly, that final reveal at the very end with Brooklyn being alive as a big surprise and spoiler there. That, to me, I did not like that, because a lot of the emotion and heartache that the characters experience throughout the season is because of her death. And now to bring her back, it just, I know they don't know she's alive yet, but like, it was a real opportunity to actually have a very, impactful thing that has happened within this show, but that also sticks. And now they've just unstuck it and said, oh no, she's actually alive. And obviously she's going to eventually get back together with them all, and they'll go on new adventures together. It showed her she's missing an arm. I'm sure they'll give her some sort of prosthetic arm at some point to replace that. But like, it cheapened it for me, like all of the emotions that they built up throughout the season, which were done really well. And it just, unfortunately, just kind of undercuts a lot of that. It's a classic thing, trope, where they just bring back a character everyone thought was dead, and it's never the same. She was much better and effective to this new story by being dead, because of the emotions that she can affect out of those other characters. And so now that's going to go away eventually once she reunites with them. But other than those few minor gripes, for the most part, I quite enjoyed the season. I was very surprised by the characters in this show and how invested I was in what was going on with them. A lot of the action was great. The suspense that they created in a lot of those scenes where the raptors are hunting them was very well done. Intriguing stuff all around. Very surprising for a kids animated show, but I shouldn't be surprised as well. I should say, after Camp Cretaceous, which is a very solid show. I'd say this season is maybe the second or third best out of all of these seasons so far, including Camp Cretaceous. Still, that season 3 of Camp Cretaceous remains the best by far. That was fantastic. This one maybe is up there with the first season of Camp Cretaceous, but it's really in the thick of it as being a great show. And I'm very much intrigued, despite being upset with that ending just kind of being a cliffhanger. I am, still intrigued to see where it goes from here. And so ultimately, I'm going to give this season or series a 7.5 out of 10. Anyways, that's my review of Jurassic World Chaos Theory, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below if you've had a chance to check out the show. If you haven't, I really recommend you do. It is quite good. And if you haven't even seen Camp Cretaceous, I would recommend seeing that one too. It's some of the best Jurassic content we've had in years, frankly. So yeah, I very much recommend them. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.